Bids are in. The gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast on all things wine auction, wine value, wine retail, and wine, whatever we decide to discuss relating to wine. This is our episode of lots coming into auction this week. My name is Jeff McGurn. I work here on our WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is our illustrious wine auction expert and wine expert, Paul Walker. Welcome again, Paul, to this wonderful episode. Normally, we split this up into multiple episodes. We think we can power through everything coming into auction, although Paul, I think, disagrees with me. Let's start with Bordeaux, and we're going to jump right into it. Let's start with Bordeaux. I actually think there wasn't a ton of Bordeaux coming to auction. I mean, it's sort of some of your usual first growth suspects. So the only thing that I really noted from a Bordeaux perspective was there was a mag of 08 Chateau Gombaud Goudeau. This one for $70. It's great juice. It's right in its drinking window, and it's a mag, and it's $70. I thought that one looked really interesting to me. What Bordeaux were you watching? Huh?
How do you spell that again?
You couldn't tell from my perfect pronunciation.
Based on your pronunciation, I'm having trouble finding it in the
G-O. Well, it's not based on my pronunciation. It's based on your incorrect understanding of how to pronounce things. Gombaude.
Gombaud, Guillot. Okay, yes. I did see this, and I was like, I think this is the bottle Jeff's talking about, but I couldn't remember the name, and I could not understand what you were talking about. So, do not know this producer at all. $70 and for a mag seems like a good deal. So, I'm wondering, did you check in with your Cellar Tracker sponsors on how this wine's
I did. It gets great tasting now.
Oh, really? So it's like, okay, so people have tried it.
Yeah, cool. This is one where I was like, this is really interesting. I'm really curious to see what folks are saying. And a lot of people really enjoy it. And I feel like for $35 for a 750, it seems to punch above its weight. I think that would be one that would be worth taking a gamble on, rolling the dice on that mag.
Yeah, it's weird. I just checked Parker's for fun. There's 0 reviews between 2000 and 2015. So I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, very curious because I don't think I've ever seen this before. So we'll have to look into it more. Cool. Well, you were asking a while back if I was looking at other Bordeaux, and I am. I noticed 2015, I always like to look at well-known Bordeaux for under $100. There's a bottle of 15 Grand Prix Lacoste at 65, which I think is a fantastic price. It's a killer vintage. It got big scores. I'm kind of surprised that it's at that price, but hey, this wine has been kind of ignored for a long time, but older vintages obviously go for a lot more. It's known by collectors as, as being a good deal. And anyway, so the 15 at 65 reserve was a good standout for me. Moving up a little bit in price, but still interesting. There's 09 Montrose, which is, again, we talk about, obviously, we like to talk about a lot of the same producers pretty often, but I think it's important, to show what's out there. 09 Montrose, another 100-pointer for Montrose, but not nearly as expensive as the famous 1990, and also, I think, quite a bit less than the 89. The 09 is at 250 reserve, which I don't think is insane for how high quality of wine that is. And then on the flip side, the 14 Montrose is in at 115.
Yeah, I was going to say.
A great deal.
Fantastic for Montrose.
Yeah, it's not the greatest vintage of all time, but it's not a bad vintage by any means. So
it got decent scores.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it's drinking. I don't know what your buddies over at Cellar Tracker say about it, but it sounds like a good deal to me. So
also a 2015 Rosan Segla.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that.
This one for $91, highly reviewed, bottle. I thought that one was interesting. And then a whole grip of 87 Pavillon Rouge de Margaux.
I did see those.
That was interesting to see a bunch of that. Like somebody liquidated their Pavillon Rouge de Margaux collection there because there's like 6 of them or something.
Funny vintage too. It's like a weird year.
Yeah. And then there's a 2010 Léoville Barton for $175.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's not bad at all. And that one was highly regarded. So I thought that was interesting. And then an 09 Léoville Portrait for $195.
Yeah, I was like, man, that's expensive. But then, of course, that's another 100-pointer.
It's another 100-pointer from Robert Parker, just like the 05 Koth for $225. Right. But you're looking at, 99 points, 98 points. It was number 28 of Wine Spectator's top 100 wines of 2008, which I know I didn't even have to say that. I say that for the people watching. Paul memorizes all of Wine Spectator's top 100 throughout the years.
Name any year, any number, 100.
He's like a Rain Man for Wine Spectator top 100 lists and Robert Parker scores. Anyway, let's jump to Burgundy. All right.
No, wait, hold on. I want a couple more I got to mention, because you mentioned the 2010. What was it? Level Bartone for what was it? 175 or something.
Yeah, 175.
Yeah, for a little bit more. 2010 Level Las Casas in at 225.
Yeah,
which is such a killer wine. Yeah, we mentioned the Level Poivré, which is very high for that producer, but it's a score. 81 Margaux, Jeff. What about 81 Margaux?
I didn't want to mention that just in case somebody's going to try and... Speaking of wine, the 05 Cos is in for 225. Let's get off of talking about things that I might want to bid on. But yeah,
81 Margaux, everybody. 81 Margaux. $410 reserve.
Yeah, and what a deal that 81 Margaux is for a year that had, was not a great year for Bordeaux and not a great year for Margaux.
I think you always dog this vintage, but I've had some seriously good wines from 81 in Bordeaux specifically. So don't give up hope. It's not as bad as you think.
Let's move on to Burgundy, okay?
Okay.
I thought these were really interesting. We have a 2010 Costerie Bourgogne Rouge. This one, 155. You're interested in trying Costerie, but you don't have a 4-figure budget for a single bottle of wine. If you're willing to spend 155 this is Village wine, right? So if you're willing to spend 155 on a Village wine, this could be for you. And then likewise, there was a 2009 Mio Camus Richebourg.
Yeah.
A mere 23.
Those wines are just so phenomenal, but phenomenally high prices to match, which is interesting. Because here's my question for you. This Richebourg, we've got the 09 and the 2010 at auction. The 09 for 2,300 and the 2010 for 26. For the money, if you were going to buy a bottle of this, which one would you go with? I don't know. Probably 09, just because I have more experience with 09 reds, and I thought I just preferred the style. Maybe that's me. Maybe my palate's like leaning towards wanting higher, I don't know, sweetness levels or fruit concentration or something, but I would go for the 09. 10 will probably last longer if you're wanting to stash it for a long time, because I think there was some pretty bracing, pretty serious backbone on the 2010s reds especially, but I would go for the 09 if you want to try it in the next 10 years. The other thing I was going to say too, Jeff, because you talk about Costerie, I actually flagged all of Costerie because there's Ose Duress as well.
There's a ton of Costerie.
The Ose Duress 11 is 180, and I was like, I think it'd make more sense to buy the 2010 Bourgogne Rouge at 155 because it's a better vintage by far. And Costerie Bourgogne Rouge it's not sort of unserious wine. I've actually had the 09 not too long ago, and it was really, really, really good. And so for that level of quality, it's not like you're getting bad fruit just because it's Bourgogne Rouge and it's red wine from Costerie as opposed to Meursault or other things. So I don't know. I thought that the best deal there is the 10 Bourgogne Rouge when there's Ose Duress 11 at 180 and also Bourgogne Rouge 11 at 165, which doesn't really make sense to me that it's more than the 10. But then of course you can ramp it up and get the 11 Meursault Rougeot for 1,500. That's also in this week. And then there's 2010 Montelly for 175. So really neat selection. There's actually, on the level of very serious Burgundy, there's a whole bunch of Bizot in this week, a whole bunch.
I was going to mention all the Bizot. Like there's a ton. I was looking at the 2011 Echezot, which we have 2 bottles at a paltry $4,800 a bottle. But this is another one of, this or that. Like if you were to pick one of these bottles to buy me for my birthday, which of the Bizots would you get me?
Well, I already got you the 81 Margaux, so assuming my bid wins on it.
Can you give me a case of wine?
A mixed case of Bizot.
Yeah,
actually, that's probably one of the rare times you could put together a couple cases of Bizot. No, the funny thing is, look, everything's 4 figures, right? And even the Bourgognes like the Oco de Nuit Blanc is $22.50. So I think if you're going to spend that kind of money on Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, just forget it. Just go for the gold. Get the Echezot at $45.50. Don't mess around with the Premier Cru or the Village stuff. Go big. I mean, even it's funny. It's like the Village stuff is at like the 1 to 2,000, and then the Premier Crus are like 2 to 3,000, and then the Grand Crus are up 4 and up. So I would just go for the Echezot.
Go big or go home.
You're already get the 09. I would not buy the 11. I would buy the 09 because it's less, which doesn't make sense. There you go. 09 Echezot $45.50 and the 11's at $4,800, which
because it's old. Who wants any of that old wine?
It doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's what I would do. Go big for that because you're already in for at least I don't know.
Dude, you're in for a penny.
1,900 is the Chapitre. The 14 less Chapitras at $19.90. So you're basically in for 2,000 at least out the door. So yeah, just go big.
What about this 2019 Georges Muneret Vosne?
Yeah, Muneret Vosne, serious stuff, serious vintage. What is it at? Is it two?
Well, it started at $295. It's got 2 bids. It's up to $325 now.
Yeah.
So we're already seeing action. And there's an 82.
There's an 82 also. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. No, I saw those. I didn't write them down just because I think we talked about Muneret a lot. But I mean, it's always, $325 now for the 19. That's a lot. But hey, serious stuff. It's phenomenally good wine. So go for it. What else? Oh, yeah, there was kind of a string of interesting Bruno Collin wines. There's like 2,000 multiple bottles of 2014. And they're all. It kind of looks like they're all getting some bids because it's such a great white vintage. And I think they're we've been talking about some of these Chassagne producers, in the 3 figures heading in almost into 4-figure territory, which is just crazy. But Chassagne Montrachet Blanc at 51. I don't know why it says Blanc, but anyway, it's Chardonnay. And then there's Remilly 14 at 76. There's Le Maltois 14 at 85. And then
did you see this? Sorry, did you mention the Chassagne Montrachet Blanc at 51?
Yeah, I said Blanc was redundant. I thought that was funny, but yeah, at 51. And then Verger is at 110. All 14 vintage. And great stuff. So I think, bidders are like, oh, wait, these are reasonable compared to all these other crazy white producers we've seen.
Did you notice the embarrassment of Ravenau coming into auction this week? And a lot of it with bids on it. Bids on it already. Like I saw the 09 Chablis, that one is already it started at 110, has 4 bids, is already at 150.
Oh, so straight Chablis. I just picked one because there were so many.
There were so many.
Yeah. There's 09 Appellation, and it's under $200. That's pretty interesting.
Just so much up. Did you notice there was a 2014 Domaine Rouleau Montier? This one $70, and a bunch of these Domaine Rouleau Montiers coming in.
And the Montier.
Montier. Already seeing a lot of action on them as well.
Kind of similar to the Coach 3 selection this week in that you can buy the red Montier for $65, or you can buy the Merceau Perrier 2010 for $12.75. So yeah, it's an interesting juxtaposition in inexpensive reds and very expensive whites, which we love to talk about.
Exactly. There was a nice, this one I wanted to get your opinion on. Now, I know you hate everything from Corton, but there was an 06 Pierre Goudimont.
Completely untrue.
Huh?
What do you mean?
You said
Corton Charlemagne.
You said you refused to gargle with it.
No nonsense.
You wouldn't even. You'd spit it out. This Pierre Goudimont Corton Le Rhône et Corton. This is $70 for a Grand Cru Corton.
I didn't see that. Pierre, what's the last name?
Goudimont.
Guillemot. Okay, yeah.
Guillemot.
Corton Rhône. Okay, yeah. 2006. Yeah, that's a deal for Grand Cru Reds. I mean, again, you've got to know your Cortons and you got to know your producers, right? So you need to know if this wine is to your liking, I suppose. But still, it's almost worth taking a shot, taking a chance to see
for $70.
Yeah, $70. Well, all 6 bottles have bids on them already at 70. So
I mean, somebody's had the same thought as we're having right now. For $70, I'll roll the dice on some Grand Cru.
No, I mean,
Some Grand Cru
it's not,
Corton.
I don't think you're going to be severely disappointed. However, I'm not sure, of the, let's just say, track record of Pierre Guimond in Corton. I don't know, what, it's not Mayo Camazé, let's just say that.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
And Jeff's non sequitur for the podcast has been mentioned.
That's right. Speaking of, Corton Grand Cru, which again, you wouldn't even gargle with. 2010, I'm going to butcher this name. Follin, Arbelay, Corton.
No, actually, this is a
Sunday.
producer I follow.
$95.
Yeah. No, Follin, Arbelay, Corton Bresson, 95. That is serious wine. So now that I would definitely, buy for
$6.95 with. You would use that as mouthwash.
Definitely. No, that's great stuff. I'm curious, actually. I'm going to track it. I'm going to keep an eye on it.
What other Burgundies were you tracking?
Let's see. So I mentioned the Bruno Colin wines. There's actually more than just the 14s, but I thought for today I would just mention those. This is such a great white vintage. We talked about Bizot, obviously Ravenot, but Mayo Camazé made me think that the original winemaker, Henri Jaillet, there's a bottle of 1995 Henri Jaillet Bourgogne Rouge in this week for $24.50. So next to the Bizot pricing, it doesn't seem that crazy, which is just kind of unreal that, a younger producer like Bizot would cost more than like the most famous winemaker in Burgundy of all time. I would say Henri Jaillet Bourgogne Rouge, $24.50 for the 95. I would, in earlier answer to your question, I would scrap all the Bizot and buy the Henri Jaillet for $24.50. So there you go. Only slightly more than the Mayo Camazé Richebourg's in this week. Actually, well, I should say the 09. I don't know why the 10 is more, but go figure. And that was all I had for Burgundy this week.
Shall we travel around the rest of France before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Let's start with, I point this out because it's going to be either an anniversary or birth year. 1983, Moet Chandon, Dom Perignon. Again, and you don't like aged champagne at all. He prefers brand new champagne. But this one I thought would be super interesting for somebody having a birthday this year for $460.
83, was it?
Yeah, 1983.
Yeah. That seems to be where a lot of vintage Dom Perignon seems to be in that kind of 350, 450 for, depending on the strength of the vintage, seems to be in that range. So I didn't see that actually.
Any other sparkling that?
Actually, yes, absolutely. There is. I always like to mention there's Cedric Bouchard in whenever it comes up. I like to mention it. I just love these wines. There's that's the Orsul 18 Orsul at 275. There's the Val Vilaine 2020 at 170, and then 18 Haute Lamble at 285. And then one of my favorites anyway, Jérôme Prévost, there's the 19 ampersand is on the label. Apparently the wine, I actually looked this up, it's actually named Esperluette, and it's also purchased fruit, and something else I discovered today while doing a tiny little bit of research. So this is the one wine that Jérôme Prévost makes that's not estate, that's not his own vineyard, but it is Pinot Meunier, 100%. Anyway, there's 319s in at 310. There's one 2020 in at 290. And then there's maybe his most famous wine, or at least most available that I'm aware of, the Le Béguin, the Closerie Béguin, which is at 210 for the 2020. So those wanted to talk about. There's also a bottle of Thomas Perceval Pucelle in this week at 90. And I think we talked about a Perceval wine from last week, but it's a different label. Anyway, those were the champagnes that stuck out to me this week.
Well, let's head over to the Rhone. Actually, a ton of great stuff coming in from the Rhone, I thought. We've got like a bottle of 2012 Gougal Côte Rôtie, Chateau d'Ampuis. This one, $90. Beautiful Côte Rôtie. Seemed like a decent price to me. We've got two of those. I think there was actually some other Côte Rôties as well. I'll mention the Levée Côte Rôtie.
Yeah, it's funny because this is one of these wines that we talked about, I think, either last week or the week before, and it was like, oh, we never see these, and then this week there's
like another one. I was like, hey, here it is.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch. There's 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of Levay Côte Rôtie. It's like, and they're getting bids from what I can tell. Looks like they're all getting bids. So really wild suddenly to see like almost a full vertical from 2011.
I'm fairly certain all the Levays coming into auction have bids on them. I think I looked and every single one. Yeah. So somebody's totally going after those Levays. There's some interesting Cornat coming into auction. Domaine Alain Vaux, 1990. For 70,
I flagged
$70
because I thought it was a steal. I thought,
yeah, 34 years old for $70.
Yeah, I'm almost suspicious that this people know this wine isn't good or something, because I was like, wait a minute, Vosges 1990 for $70 for the Cornas. I mean, that's got to be a great deal. And there's multiple bottles. There's not just one. So
there's 4 of them,
slightly similar in shape. They're like 3.5 centimeter ullage on a couple of them. One's got seepage, so that'll probably take longer to move, or 2 of them actually. 3 of them. Never mind.
Maybe they're making room for 91s.
Well, 91s go for a lot.
Speaking of Cornat, Domaine Thierry Allemand Cornat.
Yeah, a bunch more Allemand this week.
06, this one 320. We've got 3 of them, and there's a ton of Allemands coming in this week.
Yeah, and that's weird too, because it's like we spoke about a couple examples in last week and we hadn't seen it in a long time, and then all of a sudden this week there's a bunch more.
There's a bunch more.
Yeah, and even go back to 95, which you definitely don't see Allemand from the 90s very often, and obviously the price reflects that. It's at 370s, so there you go.
And there was a 2012 Jean-Louis Chave Hermitage that already has some action on it at 330. Again, really nice Hermitage with some action. And then we had south a little bit. There was a Domaine de Vue Telegraphe Châteauneuf du Pape mag for 150.
Yeah, in fact,
a bunch of mags.
There's a bunch of mags, right? There's 16 mags, 13 mags, 11, 10.
Yeah, a 9. Bunch of Vue Telegraph mags. I thought those were really cool. And I think those prices are actually pretty solid as well. Yep. 150 for those mags. I mean, I think that seems reasonable. Then there was a 07 Pierre Usaglio Châteauneuf du Pape Cuvée Demon Ayul. This one, 185. I thought this one was hysterical because it gets great reviews. I think Robert Parker might have given it like 100 or something.
You're right. Yeah, 100 points to Parker. I'm looking at it.
And then you go and read the tasting notes on Cellar Tracker, and people are calling it Parkerized.
Yeah, well, that's the 07 vintage. I think there's a lot of controversy over 07 Châteauneuf because some of them were just super, super ripe and extracted. And I think, I think somebody went on one of the forums and like, are there any 07 Châteauneufs that are worthwhile, or any of them good or something, so one of those vintages where I'm a little wary. I haven't had much experience with them, frankly. So, and I kind of stick to the same producers in Châteauneuf too. I don't really try that many of them outside of the ones that I like. So I don't know. We'll see how that ends up, turning out years later. But
anything else from the Rhone you want to mention before we move on?
I think there was a Broussais Gigondas in this Les Hôtes de Montmirail, which is really, really good. $40 is a lot for Gigondas, which I think other people would agree, but still, that's really, really tasty wine. And then again, like we've seen, we've seen just some incredible runs in the last few weeks, but there's a 15 Stéphane Côte Rôtie at 55, which I think is a great price. And then a couple 40 Saint Joseph's, 19 at 40 and 17 at 40. And, Saint Joseph is rapidly, I think, becoming more and more popular. And I think the prices will go quite a bit higher over the years. So I don't think those were too bad. There's also Old Vines 1940 for 50 reserve. So
you heard it here first from Paul Walker, folks. He rates Saint Joseph as a buy. Strong buy.
Buy to drink, Joe. I'm not telling people to buy to invest, which is what it seems like you're kind of implying in your tone.
I'm not implying anything. You just made that implication. Not a Rhone, but there is an interesting Rhone blend from the Languedoc-Roussillon, 2014, La Piera on Damascella. I'm Terrassas du Luzrac. I totally butchered that one. It is $65. It looks like a really interesting Rhone blend from the Languedoc-Roussillon.
I'm going to have to investigate your pronunciation. That's going to take a while to figure that out first, but how do you spell this?
LA space Peira.
Pura. Okay. Like the Barolo producer.
But this is in France. We're in France right now. Can't make
Is it
Barolo in
Languedoc?
France. What's that?
Is it Languedoc?
Yeah, it's in Languedoc.
Okay, I can't find it. Interesting.
Peira. Yeah, I just found it. Peira.
Peira. Oh, I didn't hear you.
That's what I said. We have video proof that that's what I said.
That is actually a pretty wild name. La Pera on de Mesela. That's a really cool.
I think you're mispronouncing it.
Well, Pera de Mesela, it doesn't sound like, it could be like yeah, that's really interesting. I do not know this producer at all, so that's cool. That's cool you found that. I've never seen it before. Needs a picture.
I want to see our photo of it, but I found that and I thought it looked really cool because, I don't know. I guess it actually gets really good reviews. I don't know. I feel like we don't see a ton of amazing stuff coming out of Languedoc necessarily at auction.
Not something like this where I think it's, one of these producers that's at least not well known. Well, at least I don't know what it is, which doesn't really mean anything, but there are definitely a lot of reviews in the Advocate. So I'm going to have to look this up and find out what's going on, but that's interesting stuff for sure. Terrasse Larzac. Yeah, we'll definitely have to find this.
And then the only other thing in France that I wanted to mention, which I have to mention, is we have a crazy number, maybe not a crazy number. We have a bunch of Domaine Tempier mags coming in, which I thought was really cool. Of course, I'm going to talk about, Domaine Tempier. So we've got a bunch of mags coming in. The one I picked was like $190, but I thought those were a reasonable price for Domaine Tempier mags.
Yeah, no, definitely. And large format of these actually is quite rare. We do see, quite a bit of Tempier wines. Obviously, the usual suspects, the rosé, et cetera, but large formats of the like Migua. I don't remember. I don't remember the last time I saw magnums of this. That is very cool. Those are collectible for sure. So.
They're the Magua and the Tortine. We've got mags of both of those. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap things up here?
Tortino 9 and 11. Yeah, interesting. No, I think that's actually about it for France. So we will move on to our next episode, and you'll have to hear about the rest of the world.
That's right. All right. With WineBid's finally hammered, wishing you happy bidding and cheers. I am Jeff McGurn, and this is, of course, Paul Walker. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.